Thank you, Count Corley. I welcome the fact that this legislation is in front of us, and in fairness, it's gone on a long time, and I acknowledge the fact that the Taoiseach made a commitment when Vicky passed away that it would be done, so I acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge your officials and people who work with you, who met with us earlier and did go through and did, in fact, in fairness, address some of my concerns and others. But we shouldn't be here, Minister. This is rushed. This is so rushed. Like, we got these 40-something pages of amendments on Friday. The amount of questions, the more I go into it, the more questions I have. I want to support this bill. We shouldn't be here doing this like this. Even next week would have been fine, because we could have done with more time with your officials. I've had more questions since I came out from the meeting. I've spoken to a lot more people. We just shouldn't be here. It's not good practice, and particularly on such a sensitive bill. And I'm passionate about this bill for reasons you're well aware. This is not open disclosure. It simply isn't. Now, having reflected on the meeting we had, and I won't have enough time to go through all my issues, but having reflected on the meeting we had, I understand the balancing act your officials have. There's a balancing act here. This is a very, very, very technical piece of legislation. It crosses into a lot of different areas. I understand that, I get that, all right? And I have sympathy for the balancing act that you and your officials are trying to perform. And particularly when it comes to the whole issue of screening, given everything that's gone on, the balancing act in relation to ensuring that we have providers into the future. And Scally, in moments where you talk to him privately, would, Dr. Scally would acknowledge that there was that balancing act. You had to keep the system in place as well. But I talk a lot to Lorraine Walsh and Stephen Teep, you know that. They're very good friends of mine. Worked with them for many years. They're watching here now. They're watching me speak. And they do not support this legislation in this format. And that's the test for me. Because, to quote Stephen, this is not fit for purpose. And to quote, well, I won't quote Lorraine because of the way in which she put it, but this doesn't pass the Vicky test. Others have spoken here before me. This doesn't pass the Vicky test. And that is so, so, so important to me. It doesn't pass the test. Because in her case, after what happened, if it was going through this, there wouldn't have been an obligation. And that's the reason why we can't support it as it's currently drafted. I know you said that, but that's not the view. I have a number of other points. The anonymisation and the way in which the anonymisation, and your officials, in fairness, have made good inroads in explaining this to me. But that causes real issues, because in that scenario, women will have to request their files, and they'll have to know how to do it. And I didn't come out of the meeting convinced. I knew there'd be information provided and this and that and the other. But I just didn't fully come out of the meeting convinced that the people who would need to tell them would legally and morally do it. It's just not there. It's not strong enough for me. I was told in the meeting that the 221 group were fully consulted in relation to this. I want to ask a direct question. Were they shown this legislation? You might answer it. I know what they were consulted on. Were they shown this legislation, and did officials or anybody go through it with them? Very direct question I'd like an answer to. I think I know the answer, but I'd like to get on the record from the Minister to give him an opportunity to be fair. I have an issue in relation to how the audits will work, the process by which the labs will behave, the contractual nature of how that will operate. I'm not in any way satisfied by this legislation in relation to that. I have a significant issue in relation, and this is a point that's often missed. People forget that we're not doing auditing at the moment. And by the way, I know audits are good things. They're good for different reasons. To learn, you can learn things that can go across other programs, not even in the program itself. There's a whole range of reasons why this is good, very good practice. But the audit stopped at Vicky's case. They haven't begun. I have significant concerns, and I think there'll probably be legal issues as regards this piece of legislation coming in now and being retrospective from 2017 to now. Because all the variables in relation to what happened to Vicky, Ruth Morrissey, everybody else, haven't changed an iota. Which means, statistically, there has to be other issues. And this legislation now is going backwards. I think you'll probably have legal issues in relation to that. And finally, I suppose I want to ask you, Minister, to reflect on what has been said here tonight. I don't believe this legislation will be finished tonight. And I think your officials and your department need to reflect and come back and work with us in relation to proper amendments on this. And you need to talk to the likes of Lorraine, Stephen and others in the 2-to-1 group. You need to go through this legislation completely, fully, and explain it and address their concerns.
Thank you, Deputy.
One last thing, notifiable incidents. I did take from what you said earlier on, I understood that obviously 12 of the 13 reasons now is where somebody passes away. And I understand, sorry, John Crowley, just only take me a few seconds. I understand that you will do it. Our Minister can elongate or extend this by secondary legislation. But I think you need to say on the record of the Dáil that that is your intention to do or while this government is in place, because that is also a significant weakness. Very strongly.
Thank you, Deputy Richard.